Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Setting Your Sights on 2021, How to Boost Your Mental Health in the Year Ahead. My name is Julia Marvin, and I'll be your moderator. I work on the marketing team here at Jefferson Center, and I'm so excited to be hosting this session today. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Amy Miller. Amy is a clinician here at Jefferson Center and also the manager of our senior services. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about, boosting your mental health. And, the beginning of a new year is synonymous with change. And often this is a time of year that many people resolve to make changes to their health in one way or another. So this can also include your mental health. And so making small positive changes today to boost your mental health can lead to stronger relationships, improved mood, and an overall healthy life. Amy, I'm really excited today. Amy's going to be talking to us about how we can tackle life's challenges, manage our stress, and other practical ways that we can have a happy and healthy 2021. So before I hand the mic over to Amy, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session, and we'll also have the slide deck available, and we'll be emailing those to you. I would also encourage you to visit our website at jcmh.org, where we have more resources available, along with blog posts related to this topic and more information about other upcoming webinars we're hosting. Please keep your microphones muted and turn off your video during the presentation, and you'll also want to change your Zoom view to speaker mode for the best viewing experience. And next, we'd love to hear from you during the presentation. So if you have a question for Amy, please feel free to send it through the chat at the bottom of your player, and we'll be answering those questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. And last, we'd like to encourage you to follow us on our social networks and share this recording of the webinar and other information about Jefferson Center. And so without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Amy Miller. Amy, over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Julia. Yes, welcome everyone. We're so excited to have such a great group here today, talking about a very timely topic in terms of perhaps some New Year's resolutions or just goals and ways you want to refocus and reset for this new year. Obviously, 2020 was a challenging one, and so it's a great time to sort of regroup and think about how we might want to move ahead. So a little bit of background information on New Year's resolution. Studies show that about 50% of people make a New Year's resolution. However, less than 10% are able to keep them for more than a few months. And so often with New Year's resolutions, we go too big, too fast, and they're not sustainable, or it's too challenging to work such a major change into our daily lives. And so now that we're a few weeks into the new year, this is a really great time to reevaluate how your goals or your New Year's resolutions are working for you. And, this is a very cognitive behavioral approach, but I would encourage you to avoid thinking about, oh, I gave up on them or I failed on my New Year's resolutions, and rather take it as this is information about what's working and what's not working. And so this is a great time to take the information about how your resolutions have been going over the past few weeks and use that to reevaluate if you're on the right track or if you need to make some adjustments. So if it's been going well, maybe you're ready to add something new to boost, your mood and your well-being even more. Or maybe it didn't go so well. And so now can be a great time to think about why that might be. Is it not the right goal for you to focus on right now? Was it too much? Was it not enough? Was there not enough structure? And we can talk about some of the strategies to use to create a realistic, achievable goal, New Year's resolution, that will also offer some great mental health benefits. And so when thinking about New Year's resolutions, thinking about, did I make one that's realistic, right? Being able to run 5 miles, if you've been a Netflix couch potato like many of us have been for 2020, being able to run 5 miles by the end of January maybe wasn't realistic. And so thinking about how we can modify a goal like that. Are they relevant? Often the same New Year's resolutions are common across a lot of people, right? A lot of people want to lose weight, save money, clean their house. And sometimes there's the feeling that we should have a certain New Year's resolution, but it really isn't our priority. It isn't in alignment with our personal values. And so if it's not something that's relevant to you, that feels important and motivating to you, it may not be the right resolution for you. Also, one piece of advice in terms of thinking about New Year's resolution is whether your resolution is more outcome focused or action focused. And what I mean by that is outcome focused might be something like, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to have a clean house, right? It's sort of what we're hoping to get at the end. But it's better to focus, or it's more helpful to focus on the actions you need to take to get to that goal. So if your goal is to lose 20 pounds, how will you do that? And so maybe the resolution is not, I will lose 20 pounds, but it's, I will go for a walk 3 times a week. I will cut out all sugared beverages. I will add a vegetable to every meal. And thinking about specific action steps you can take that will eventually get you to your goal. But you need that sort of roadmap on how you're going to get there. So those are often more helpful New Year's resolutions. And then in terms of thinking about resolutions about mental health, first of all, what is mental health? And really mental health is our emotional, psychological, our thoughts, and our social well-being. It's really how we relate to ourselves, our inner world, our emotions, and those around us. And also it relates to our behaviors as well. And this is a big piece of New Year's resolutions, is thinking about the behaviors we might want to change, whether that's being more active, drinking less, spending less money, saving more money. A lot of our mental health is focused on our behaviors, and a lot of our behaviors impact our mental health. So it's a very symbiotic relationship there. And really our mental health impacts our ability to manage stress, bounce back from hard times, right? Many of us have fallen on hard times this past year. And so it's important to take care of our mental health because it really does influence really all of our interactions with the world. And it's important at all stages of life. I manage the senior services team at Jefferson Center here. And mental health is important from infant to later life. And there's often specific phases of life, behavioral strategies or developmental tasks that people are going through as they relate through life. So it's very personal as well. And I encourage you to really, take the information in this presentation, which is meant for a broad audience, and take the pieces that apply to you and think about the pieces that are most relevant for you and focus on those and think about how this information might apply to your life. And then in terms of mental health, that is one piece of what we call wellness. And SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, have come up with 8 dimensions of wellness. And you can see, the circles there, they all overlap, they all impact each other. And so if one area of wellness is negatively impacted, it will affect the rest of those areas of wellness. So it's important as we're thinking about resolutions, again, if the kind of obvious ones that you tend to do year after year aren't working for you, thinking about the various domains of wellness, and it may be more helpful to focus on one of these other areas. So the emotional wellness is certainly part of mental health, financial wellness in terms of saving money, spending money responsibly. Obviously, there are larger structural issues around that in terms of income inequality and unequal access to resources that we can't control. But thinking about what we can control can be really helpful. Our social well-being, and that's been hard, where we haven't really been able to see the people we care about, at least not as much or not in person, with the pandemic going on. And so for a lot of people, their social well-being has definitely taken a hit, and it might be worth thinking about how might I want to address that going forward. Spiritual wellness, for a lot of people, spirituality is tied to their religion, but it's not necessarily the case. Often spirituality is what gives our life meaning and purpose. Why do we get up each morning? Why do we think we're here on this planet? And for some, it could be, connection to the other people in our community that we care about, or a higher purpose of, my purpose is to help someone. So if you don't have a religious practice or you don't feel very spiritual, it certainly impacts the other areas of well-being. And it can be worth thinking about, why do I think I'm here? What do I think my purpose is in life? And there can be some great strategies to explore that dimension of wellness as well. Occupational wellness, so the satisfaction we get from our work, whether that's school for kids, or if you're a working adult, or if you're retired, what's filled that sense of purpose for you in your retirement. That's often a focus of our clinical sessions. Is it caring for others? Is it being a good spouse or partner or parent? There are lots of ways our occupational work shows up in our lives, and how do we get satisfaction from what we do, how we spend our days. Obviously, physical well-being is a big one with nutrition and diet and exercise. Intellectual well-being, how are we challenging ourselves to think and grow and expand our knowledge and be creative? And then our environment too, our homes that we live in, our workplaces that we spend time in, are they comfortable? Are they safe? Are they pleasant? So as we go through, it can be helpful to kind of give us a framework. And another framework that I like, if you've taken a Psych 101 class, this might be a little bit familiar, but there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the idea is that if we start at the bottom, needs at is a call from can everyone, there we go. So the idea is if we meet the needs at the bottom, those foundational needs, it's easier to move up and meet the other needs that get more existential or mental or social or meaningful. And so it can be helpful too when thinking about New Year's resolutions, thinking about what part of the pyramid may we be struggling. So, for physiological needs, things like food, water, shelter, rest, we've probably met them at some level, but maybe we're struggling a bit. Maybe the food we've been eating isn't as nutritious as what our body really needs. Or in terms of rest, maybe we haven't been sleeping as well, right? Doom scrolling has been kind of a buzzword this year of just getting online and looking at all the terrible things that are happening. And if you're doing that in bed, right before bed, that can impact your sleep. And so it's important to think about not only are the absolute basics being met, but how well are those needs being met, and could there be room for improvement? And then after those basic physical needs are met, safety needs in terms of being in a safe environment, feeling safe with the people we're with, feeling secure in our employment, in our health, in our place we're going to live. This has been a scary year for people in terms of evictions, or I'm not sure if their job's going to be there for them. And so this can be an area that a lot of people have struggled with during the pandemic. And if those needs aren't met, it's harder to meet the needs up above it, like belongingness, of feeling those friendships, are if you're in an intimate relationship or a romantic relationship, sexual needs that might need to be met. It's hard to feel safe and secure with the people we're with if we don't feel safe and secure with the resources around us. So again, thinking about, realistically, where are you in this pyramid? And if the lower levels are more of a struggle, that might be worth it may be worth spending more attention there. But after those belongingness and connections, which obviously have been challenging during the pandemic as well, the esteem needs of respect, recognition, confidence. Do I like what I'm doing? Do the people around me value what I contribute? Things like that. And then the self-actualization piece is, Maslow framed this as reaching our full potential, but definitely those creative activities, right? Putting something out into the world for ourselves to enjoy, or potentially for other people to enjoy as well, is really important. And again, it's not like you can't move up the hierarchy of needs, and we all experience every level, but thinking about where you feel that disconnect the most can be helpful in terms of where to focus your energy. And so I encourage you, as we're going through, to think about small goals, right? Often we have these big grand plans, and that's wonderful. It's great to have something to shoot for. But in terms of getting there, we need small steps that build on each other. And it's helpful to think in terms of very small goals, because it's easier to introduce something new into your into your world, into your routine if it's smaller. If I decide I'm going to start working out for an hour every day, when that's not been part of my routine at all before, it's going to be hard for me to start carving an hour out of a busy day that already includes work and family and other obligations around my home. And so if I can start with 10 minutes a day, I'm more likely to find a space to work that in. And then once I have a place for 10 minutes, then maybe I can go up to 15 or 20 minutes and build up to a place, and then stop where it feels sustainable and where it feels like it's meeting that need. Just because I start by thinking I'd like to eventually get up to 60 minutes a day doesn't mean I have to go there. If I find that after 20 minutes, my mood is better and I have more energy and I'm not craving other food as much, or it's meeting that need, that outlet to get rid of some stress, if 20 minutes is working, go with that until it's not, and then readjust. But it's easier to succeed with a smaller step. And once you have a success that motivates you, that builds your self-confidence, then it's easier to build on that versus shooting for 60 minutes, a big goal right away, failing, and then feeling like, oh, I just can't do this. So it's much better for your confidence and motivation to start small and build on that. But it helps reinforce the new habit as well. If you say, okay, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk, and then you do that, then you get that sense of accomplishment and that good feeling, those positive emotions that come with doing what you committed to yourself that you were going to do, helps reinforce that new habit. You start to crave that sense of accomplishment, and that makes it easier to continue on and go for the 10-minute walk the next day. So in terms of making achievable resolutions, so again, think about one area where your effort would have the most impact. So what's causing you the most pain in your life right now? And maybe it is, the fact that you just feel physically yucky. we'll use that word. But you just don't physically feel great. Maybe if you're like me, over the holidays, you indulge in a lot of really delicious food and that was wonderful and enjoyable. And now you're ready for some vegetables, or you're ready to get active again after spending a lot of time indoors. Or maybe it's that social piece. And, you've kind of just been waiting on hold until you can see people again, but it's been close to a year now and it just hasn't happened. Maybe thinking about how can I start to reestablish some of those relationships. In the home environment, if your home has been cluttered or chaotic or not working for you, is there a change you could make to your home, to your routine, to make your home life more comfortable? So thinking about one area as opposed to trying to do a whole big makeover of your life, especially in the middle of a pandemic where the same resources aren't available to us. And we've had a lot of extra stress and uncertainty added to our lives anyway. Focusing on one thing that you can't control is going to be much more achievable. And again, starting small. So if your goal is to have a cleaner house, right? Again, saying I want a clean house is probably too big, too broad. What's one thing you could do? Okay, so I'll clean the kitchen every night. Go even smaller. What's smaller than cleaning the kitchen every night? And maybe it's, okay, I will do the dishes every night. Go even smaller. Think about, I will run the dishes. I will run one load of dishes that night, and whatever's in the sink will stay in the sink until morning, right? So something very small, very achievable. So I will run one load of dishes that night, scaling it down from I will have a clean house. And then it's important to celebrate your wins as well. So often we, maybe begrudgingly do the dishes and, we're kind of cranky because we'd rather be scrolling on our phone or watching TV or something like that. But really allow yourself to feel the pleasure of achieving that task that you set for yourself. Take a minute to notice how good it feels to have fewer dishes in your kitchen, or how good your body feels after moving it for 10 minutes. And really celebrate it. And there's some research to show that even having a little, it may feel cheesy, but a little celebration where you kind of pump your fist in the air, you sing a little song to yourself, or you do something to acknowledge and celebrate the work you put into meeting your goal. And that's an important part of reinforcing it too. So think about something little. It doesn't have to be a big, long celebration. It doesn't have to be something you buy every time you go for a walk. Sometimes we try to use those external motivators to reinforce New Year's resolutions or new habits. But really, it's the internal reward, the intrinsic feeling that we get, the feelings we get of accomplishment that tend to make our habits stick. So make sure to make a point to celebrate those wins too. And then also keep in mind, it's often easier to replace bad habits than to just stop them. So for example, if you notice that you're drinking a lot of caffeine and it's making you anxious, caffeine increases anxiety. It can be really hard to just cut cold turkey, both physiologically, because you may go through caffeine withdrawals and get headaches, but also because there's often a ritual associated with our habits. Our habits, good or bad, are doing something for us. We're getting some sort of benefit from them. And so to just stop it, we're getting rid of whatever benefit that was. So maybe that cup of coffee in the morning was just your way of getting 5 minutes before the chaos of the day started to regroup and focus and think about how you wanted to spend your day. So rather than saying, I'm not going to drink coffee anymore, thinking about a habit that you could replace it with. And so maybe you decide you're going to sit on your couch in the calm, in the quiet before everyone else in the house gets up. And you're still going to spend that 5 minutes thinking about the day ahead and kind of reflecting on the day and getting that moment to yourself, but without the coffee, or maybe with a cup of tea that doesn't have caffeine. So something where you still get whatever pleasure that habit is bringing you, but without the negative side effects that you're trying to avoid. And then in terms of making new habits stick, first of all, it's really important to pick a goal that's in alignment with your values. And so, for example, if you feel like you need to be healthier, you need to start working out, and you think, oh, I'll spend an hour at the gym. But your value right now might be, I have a vulnerable person at home I'm taking care of. I'm worried I might bring the virus home to them. Or, I have to spend so much time working and I feel like I'm not totally present for my kids. And I feel like if I go work out for an hour, that's taking time away from my kids. That's a goal that's not in alignment with your values of caring for and spending time with the people you care about and taking care of them. And so think about a goal that aligns with that. So if you're wanting to spend more time with your kids where you're not focused on remote learning or trying to work and juggle your kids, and you're wanting to just spend some time where you're really present with them, maybe there's an activity you can do together. Maybe you can go for a walk or drive down to a local park and you can play with them and you're getting that physical activity in, but you're not feeling like you're taking away from another priority in your life. So thinking about an action that's in alignment with your values. And then identifying any barriers. So this is a skill from motivational interviewing that we use, but thinking about a goal you want to set for yourself. So you want to cut back on caffeine. You want to, go for a 10-minute walk every day. You want to do dishes every night. Keep in mind your goal that you kind of have in mind and rate it from a scale of 1 to 10. How likely you think you could do that goal. So 1 is, it'll never happen, not going to happen. 10 is, yep, it's going to happen. I have every confidence in the world. So think about where you land at. Maybe you're a 3, a 6, wherever. And then what would it take to get you 1 point higher? So if you think you're at a 3 in terms of making this goal happen, what would it take to get you to a 4? Maybe you need better walking shoes. You don't have any comfortable walking shoes. Maybe you need someone to entertain your kid so that you can spend a little bit of time for yourself. Maybe you need to fix that noisy dishwasher because it's so loud you can't hear the TV you like to watch afterward. Or you need to run it at a different time of day, whatever the case might be. Think about what's kind of holding you back and how you might start to be able to address them. And then when you're establishing a new habit, it's important to schedule it into your day and set reminders, right? We all have the best of intentions, But often our days fill up, we get busy, and there's nothing there to kind of remind us to follow through on this resolution. So setting a reminder on your phone or having sticky notes around the house. This is have you gone for that walk yet? Or you can do this, something encouraging and motivational can be really great. But having some sort of cue that reminds you, okay, yes, I said I was going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's often very helpful to pair your new habit with an existing habit. So for example, if you want to practice gratitude, right, that's a great strategy for your mental health, thinking of things you're grateful for. Maybe you pair that with brushing your teeth. Every time I brush my teeth, while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to think of the things I'm grateful for. That's habit pairing, and that makes it easier to introduce a new habit if you kind of attach it along to an existing habit. For me, while I'm waiting for my coffee to brew in the morning, that's when I unload the dishwasher, because I really like my coffee and I'm just sitting there waiting for it to brew anyway. So while I'm waiting, I unload the dishes, and that helps me with my goal to keep my house cleaner. So thinking about how you could maybe attach it to something that's already a very solid part of your routine. And then again, stop to notice the positive benefit. Look around your house and notice how much cleaner it is. Pay attention to how much more connected your kid seems with you after you spend some time with them, or how much better you feel physically after eating some vegetables or going for a walk. Really pay attention. It's easy to just kind of run back into the day. But again, celebrate and notice the benefit that you're getting from the goals you set for yourself. And so some different strategies, particularly for any kind of mental health concern, but these are really good, just foundational habits. So if you feel like your mental health has just kind of been kind of suffering, especially with the pandemic, it's been hard for most people. These are really good foundational things that if you're not quite sure where to start or what action might be helpful, these are wonderful kind of baseline foundational strategies. So again, being mindful about what you're consuming, what you're putting in your body. Again, caffeine, as much as I love my coffee, it can make things like anxiety and irritability worse. And so if you're feeling more anxious or irritable and you're drinking a lot of caffeine, starting to cut back, and then again, see if it's working for you, and if that's a change you want to keep. But cutting back on things like caffeine, certainly things like marijuana, alcohol, other substances, many people can use them recreationally just fine. But if you're starting to feel like you need more of the substance to get the same effect, or you're reliant on it, or you're having kind of withdrawal symptoms if you don't get it, that can be a sign that it would be good to take a look at how much you're using and how you're using it. Often these substances are used to numb the negative emotions we're feeling. And after a certain point, it's an effective coping strategy to a point. And then once you've numbed for so long, it starts to show up in other places. Those negative emotions come out in other ways. And so we do have to create a space to kind of release some of those negative emotions. And we'll talk about kind of a strategy to do that in a little bit. But step one is making sure you're not relying too heavily on those substances to manage your emotions. Of course, physical activity. Physical activity is probably the best thing you can do for your mood. If you're only going to do one thing, getting in some movement, some exercise. And of course, it's going to depend on your physical abilities. Folks with disabilities may not be able to go for an hour walk. Folks with chronic pain or chronic health issues may not be able to. So, you'll want to consult with your doctor or find an activity that works for you. There's tabletop pedal bikes that you can use if getting up and walking is too hard, or exercises like sit and be fit. But of course, things like walking are accessible for many people too. So it doesn't have to be, joining a gym and getting a membership if that doesn't work for your lifestyle or your budget or your abilities. But thinking about where you can move your body and get some of those physical activities in. There's a lot of great resources on YouTube. Yoga with Adriene is fantastic, very accessible. She really encourages people to modify the movements to what feels good and appropriate for their bodies. So there's lots of good resources out there. And of course, your primary care doctor can be a great place to get started in terms of managing any sort of health or physical limitations you might have. Time in nature. we're so much of us are on Zoom, on the computer all day long, especially now. And we're often missing that chance to be outside and connect with nature. And so even a 10-minute walk, you know, if the weather cooperates or if you have the right gear for the weather, makes such a big difference in our mood. You know, even sitting closer to a window or stepping outside and getting some sunshine on your face or taking 10 deep breaths outside. Anytime you can get outside away from the screens is going to be beneficial to your mental health. So that's always good to check in with yourself too, thinking about how much time have I been able to get outside, and do I maybe want to make that more of a priority this year? Eating well-balanced meals. Again, this is often a time of year where we see people really focusing on healthy eating. And I think that makes sense, you know, after a lot of the rich, indulgent foods of Christmas with, you know, cookies and treats and hot chocolate and eggnog. You know, I think after a certain point, it's natural for our bodies to crave more of a balance and kind of, you know, focus on the vegetables and lean protein and things like that. But all foods can fit into a healthy diet. And just thinking about, does your diet feel balanced right now? Are you getting the nutrients you need? Are you getting some vegetables and produce if, you know, if that's accessible to you? Of course, not everyone has the ability to go and shop for fresh food on a regular basis, but doing what you can for with the resources you have in terms of nourishing your body can be really helpful. Meditation and journaling. And again, start small. It doesn't have to be long. Sometimes there's the idea that, oh, if I don't write down my thoughts for 15 minutes, it's not worth it. But actually, you can get like 1-sentence journals, or you can just grab a notebook or a pad of paper that's lying around. And again, start small. I'm going to write 1 sentence a day. I'm just going to write 1 sentence about something that happened, something I enjoyed, a thought that crossed my mind. But just starting with 1 sentence, and often, you know, it leads to writing more. But that way, again, you've set the bar low and you've you know, created that opportunity for success to stick with it. So journaling can be so wonderful for our mental health as well, especially for feeling anxious or stressed. Journaling, particularly the act of writing, forces our brains to slow down. And so it makes it much more manageable. And often we see things or make connections that we just can't if we're just laying in bed and having these thoughts kind of cycle through our brain. So journaling can be really fantastic. Meditation, another form of mindfulness, that's really helpful. And again, you don't have to sit in silence and meditate for half an hour. If that's not for you, it's certainly not for me. But you can do guided meditations. We actually do a call-in program with the Jefferson County Public Library where anyone can call in on Thursday mornings and be walked through a guided meditation by one of our therapists. You can find them online. There's free versions of apps like Calm or Headspace that have free guided meditation. So that can be much more accessible for people. And, you know, doing a 5-minute guided meditation is often much more approachable and then you can build up and meditate for longer if you like. But also just deep breathing is a form of mindfulness and meditation. Breathing in, an easy strategy is what I call square breathing, where you breathe in for 5 counts, hold it for 5 counts, and then exhale for 5 counts. And then if you can keep going, if you can exhale for the full 10 counts, making the exhale longer than the inhale is really what signals to your body that you're not under threat. You kind of get out of that flight or fight mode by exhaling, having a long exhale. So that's a great way to signal to your body that it's okay for it to release any stress that's been built up. So 5 deep breaths, 2 deep breaths, 3 deep breaths, whatever you can fit into your day is a great way also to release some stress. Practicing good sleep hygiene. So again, being mindful about caffeine consumption, either cutting back or avoiding it after noon is a great strategy as well. Not having screens in the bedroom, making sure your bedroom is cool and dark and quiet, or getting a white noise machine. You can do lots of research or just do a Google search for sleep hygiene and get some really great strategies. But if the quality of your sleep hasn't been great, that's a really important place to start too. This one is, easier said than done, I think, especially in the past year we've had, but definitely being mindful about what you're consuming and how much you're consuming in terms of news, especially negative news. It's okay to set limits on yourself. Thinking about the events of a couple weeks ago, it was everywhere. It was really hard to avoid hearing what's going on. And, there's the point of being informed, and then there's the point of just punishing yourself more than you need to be informed. And so not being afraid to, put down the phone or turn off the TV or switch the channel or, do maybe a game on your phone instead. I know that phone habit can be hard to break, right? And so rather than stopping it, replacing it with a different activity on your phone that doesn't cause the same level of stress can be helpful too. And then spending time, again, it might be virtually right now, but connecting where you can with your friends, family, spiritual beliefs, spiritual community is incredibly important for mental health as well. And that's a really important piece of resiliency and being able to bounce back from hard times. And then we talked about deep breathing as well. So again, if you're looking for a place to start, these are all great suggestions. Pick the one that feels most relevant to you and think about setting a small goal around that. Oh, and yoga. Yoga. Gotta have those 2 bullet points there. But then specifically thinking about coping with the times we're living in terms of being in a pandemic and not having the same things accessible to us, gyms being closed or very limited in their capacity, or not being able to meet friends at a restaurant, or, spend extended periods of time with the people we care about indoors, thinking about how to cope with COVID specifically. And accepting that it's just different right now. It can be hard. And I think for a lot of us, knowing that the vaccine is here and people are starting to get it, there's this urgency or this sense of wanting it to just be over with and to kind of fight the restrictions we might see or things like that. But it's important to accept that this is still where we're at right now. It's not something we're going to be able to change. And so rather than, spending energy being mad about the restrictions or the limitations or the fact that we can't be with the people we care about, of course, it's perfectly appropriate to be sad and upset and disappointed, but not getting stuck in those emotions, letting ourselves feel them and then moving on to a place of acceptance is important. Expecting less from yourself. And again, with New Year's resolutions, this really is not the year to plan a total makeover. It's hard because on social media in particular, you will see people who, were able to start a completely new exercise routine or change their diet or do whatever and have this physical transformation. But for most of us, shifting to working remotely, helping our kids with remote learning, taking care of older family members that need more support, and just the stress and the strain of everything, it takes an emotional and mental toll. And so lower the bar. That is the best way to go. Things are not going to look the same. Your kids are going to have more screen time. You're probably not going to be able to be as physically active when you're tied to your computer all day. And that's okay. This is a period of time where we are keeping each other safe. And that is the priority. And it will come to an end. And at that time, we can start to, bring back the things we've been missing. But for right now, get through the day as best you can and don't beat yourself up for the things that go undone. It's important too to understand that a lot of what we're feeling is grief, the grief of not only potentially the loss of life of someone we know who may have contracted the virus, but just grieving the little things that we might feel like, oh, I don't deserve, or I shouldn't feel bad about this. There's, so many people who have worse problems, but, if you were planning to take a trip, or you had a kid who was graduating, or a wedding that got canceled, right? That's grief, that's sadness, there's disappointment there. And it's important not to brush over it and minimize it. It's important to let ourselves, feel sad if there's things we've missed, if there's things that we were looking forward to that we're disappointed about. And part of that is embracing this idea of both and thinking. You can both, be sad that your trip, your event, your time with family isn't happening, and be grateful that people are making the choice to keep each other safe. right? We don't, often people try to frame things in very black or white situations of this is terrible and this isn't right, but it can be both. And it's terrible that we aren't able to be together the way we used to, and it's important that we do these things to keep each other safe. You know, I'm frustrated and overwhelmed by, you know, all my family members being together all the time, and I'm grateful for my family. They drive me crazy and I love them. You know, both and is a very important skill, you know, to be able to accept the very, you know, multi-layered parts of our lives. So looking for activities that can fulfill you. A lot of people have gotten into baking or home repair or, you know, a lot of different things. Creative things are wonderful as well. So finding something that fills you back up, because there's so much of the pandemic that is just draining and takes from you. And so what's something you can do that fills you back up, that fills your cup and lets you continue to keep moving through the day that you need to. So music is great. Any sort of creative activity is wonderful. And it could be social relationships as well, making sure to connect with people. And again, starting small, you know, if you're working full time and caring for small children or caring for a sick relative, you may not have a lot of extra time in your day to just sit on the phone and chat, but maybe you could send a text message or a meme or a call or write a quick note in the mail. Finding some way to kind of maintain that sense of connection with others can be really helpful too. And then the idea of building your resilience bank account. So there's going to be some days where you're just barely getting through, and you probably have all experienced this at some point. But on the days where you have a little bit more energy, a little bit more capacity, things are just, they don't feel quite as heavy, doing things to fill up your bank account for the days that are harder. So going for a walk, calling a friend, going to the grocery store and buying some food for meals for the week ahead, doing something that your future self will thank you for. And then make it easier for yourself on the days where you just don't feel like you've got the energy to do anything beyond the bare minimum. You know, maybe cleaning the house or organizing the closet. Again, as you have the capacity and the ability, you know, spending that energy on things that will pay you off in the future is a great way to kind of take care of yourself, take care of your future self. And then finding ways to play. So again, so much of it just feels draining and exhausting right now in our world, but finding ways to be playful, to be silly, or for a lot of people, play is sort of those activities that get us in the zone. So, you know, maybe it's doing a puzzle or painting or writing or singing along to music, but finding something that just gets you into that zone, fills you up with joy. It's important to find the things that replenish us and restore us. And, you know, again, put some money into our resiliency bank account so that on the days that are really hard, we're not just drawing from empty. And so part of this too is managing the cycle of the stress response. And so for a lot of people, they think, oh, well, when the pandemic's over, it'll be fine. We can go back to normal. And that's a little bit simplistic. It's not going to be that easy because our bodies will hang on to the stress of an event until we find a way to get rid of it, to release it. And so that's the idea behind the stress cycle. And so we'll kind of walk through it together. But thinking first of the stressor. So what's going on that's causing you stress? And how can you manage it? So obviously the pandemic is a stressor. Political unrest is a stressor. Family conflict can be a stressor. So what can you do to minimize that? So again, limiting time on media and social media, lowering your external expectations. Again, nothing's going to get done to the same standard that it used to, and let that be okay. Let that be enough. Minimize, you know, the strain of the internal expectations that you put on yourself. Set boundaries with other people. You know, if people are calling and needing to vent and stress and it's starting to take a toll on your mental health, putting some boundaries around, you know, I'm just not in the headspace to talk about this right now. Can we talk about something else? Or can I call you back tomorrow after, you know, a good night's sleep? But it's okay to communicate to others what you need and to set that limit to protect your own mental health and well-being. And then, of course, recognizing what you can control versus what you can't control. We can't control, you know, the events of DC or, you know, what other people do in terms of following social distancing guidelines. We can't control that, but focus on what you can control and what you are doing, and focusing on the helpers you see out in the world is also a good way to mentally take care of yourself too. So that's what we can do to minimize the incoming stress. And then while you're in the stressors, mindfulness can be really important. So paying attention to how the events are impacting you. And there's a few ways to do it. A body scan meditation can be really helpful, but just checking in with yourself, sort of from head to toe. You know, are your shoulders up by your ears? Is your jaw clenched? Are your muscles tight? Is your stomach churning? You know, those are important cues to pay attention to. And then doing some deep breathing. So again, just being still, being mindful, being present. In for 5, hold for 5, out for 10 as you're breathing. And then there's a strategy we use in therapy a lot also called mindful self-compassion, which again is being kind to yourself, treating yourself the way you would treat a friend. You know, would you tell a friend, oh my gosh, I can't believe you let those dishes sit in the sink overnight? You know, it doesn't matter that you were exhausted. You know, that's just not okay, right? Most of us would not talk to our friends that way. And so think about the way you talk to yourself. And is it the way you would talk to a friend that you love and care about? And the way you would talk to them on your best. And if that language isn't matching up, remind yourself to be kind and gentle with yourself too. We need to extend ourselves the same compassion we extend to others. And then it's important to take action to communicate to your body that, okay, it's okay to let go of the stress, right? Because there's a stressful event and there's an internal reaction. Our body releases adrenaline and cortisol and all sorts of chemicals and neurotransmitters that gets us ready to, fight or flee. And so if we don't do something with those chemicals, they just stay in our bodies and circulate and, wear us down. And so we have to take some sort of action to release that energy and use up those chemicals. So physical connections, if you have the opportunity for someone you live with, someone you share a household with, to get a hug, if it feels safe to do that with that person, or reaching out for an emotional connection too is important. Again, taking action where you can. So if you're feeling stressed out by people not wearing masks, maybe you decide to start making masks or distributing masks, or I saw tables with people handing out masks, things like that. If you're feeling overwhelmed by a messy house, take action where you can. Can you do a load of dishes? Can you spend 5 minutes, set a timer for 5 minutes and do a quick pickup? And just taking one step toward, toward addressing whatever is stressing you out, signals to your body that this is going to be okay. I've taken action. You can let go of some of the stress. Same thing with communicating your needs to the people around you. Journaling, again, can be really helpful to help you kind of process the emotions that came along with the stressful event. Making sure you're meeting your basic needs. Are you hungry, sleepy, tired, thirsty, lonely? Addressing those needs are really important too, and taking that action. Again, if I'm eating a good meal, it's not very likely that there's a lion chasing me. And so we need to speak our body's language. And if we're meeting our basic needs, that's a good signal to our bodies and our brains that we are safe and that we can relax and let go of some of that stress. And often letting a good cry, having a good cry is really important. Again, it's not going to fix the stressful situation, but it can release some of the pressure that we feel internally. And so with crying, there's a way to cry. It's important not to fuel the tears with thoughts, but rather focus on the physical sensation of crying. Focus on that physical release. So how many tears am I crying? Am I feeling tears out of one eye or both eyes? How snotty is my nose? Is my body shaking? Pay attention to the physical sensations rather than the thoughts. Because if you focus on the thoughts, you'll often continue to fuel that crying spell and you won't get that release, that satisfaction. of being able to let go. You'll just kind of get stuck in it. So focus on that physical sensation of crying. And often when you do that, you come to an end. It comes to an end naturally after just a few minutes. And then again, the stressor's still there, but you're in a calmer, less heightened state to be able to deal with it more effectively. And then after we've taken action throughout all this, it's important to rest. Rest our bodies, rest our minds. You know, what we are going through is draining and exhausting on its own. And it's important to take time to rest. So this is rest from the news, rest from any sort of internal or external stressors that might be coming at us. But physical rest in terms of, you know, having a good night's sleep and, you know, physically resting your body as well. But also resting your mind, having some sort of mental escape can be really helpful. So if that's, you know, reading a book, fantasy, romance, fiction, whatever kind of gets you in the zone and gets you out of your own head, you know, reading something. This is why Netflix has been so popular, you know, being able to just lose yourself in a TV show. Again, we don't want to use it so much that we're using it to numb our emotions or kind of avoid feeling our emotions, but rather as a way to kind of rest and regroup and give ourselves a break from kind of the constant influx of emotions that can be happening. And then again, restoring ourselves, finding ways to bring energy and life back into ourselves. And so finding a way to laugh. You know, if there's a TV show or a movie that just every time you watch it, you just end up with tears streaming down your face from laughter, or a story you tell with a family member about, you know, the road trip that went awry, or, you know, whatever the case is, if there's something you do that just guarantees laughter every time you do it, you know, incorporate more of that into your life, especially if there's a social component, if there's someone else who had that shared experience with you. That's so replenishing to our spirits. But definitely spending time outside in nature, doing something creative. And there's a benefit here too, that creativity is often one of the only ways we're really allowed to express strong emotions. So often, you know, if we're dealing with our kids or coworkers or, you know, whoever the case might be, we have to kind of keep our emotions in check. And then if we don't ever find a way to let them go, they just stay in our bodies and continue to cause that stress and that strain. So singing along to your favorite music, or playing an instrument if you know how to play an instrument, or dancing, or writing, you know, writing fiction. It doesn't have to be journaling, but creating something, baking, you know, the kneading of bread or chopping of vegetables. Those are all great creative things that can help kind of release some of that energy that we sometimes have to kind of keep stuff inside because of you know, the pressures of our job or parenting or the relationships or whatever we need to do. Trying something new is also a great way to you know, kind of replenish and try something new and shake things up. So if you've always wanted to, you know, write a story or paint or you know, join a choir, you know, you may not be able to do it in person, but if there's a virtual or creative way people are making that happen, you know, things like Zoom game nights or family group chat. You know, a lot of this pandemic has forced us to be creative in new ways, and that can actually be really beneficial to our mental health as well. It builds that sense of accomplishment, shows that we're resourceful, that we can problem solve, builds confidence, and then we get kind of that novel experience of trying something new, and that tends to release positive emotions as well. But doing something productive, so cleaning the house, lots of people are organizing closets or decluttering right now. Something where you can see the results of your labor can also be very satisfying. And then finding a way to give back in the world. I've seen articles about little pantries around the Denver area where people can drop off food if you know, they want to give back, and people who need it can just pick up food, and it's just there as a give and take, which I think is really lovely. So it can be something like that, donating to a cause you believe in, volunteering for a cause you believe in, but feeling like you have a positive impact and that you're addressing some of the problems you're noticing can be very, very impactful as well. And so if you're looking for more information, these are some books I've pulled from the material in these books for this presentation. So a lot of them are about changing habits and how to do that. The burnout book is fantastic in terms of managing that stress cycle and finding ways to release the stress. But we have a lot of great resources on our website, resource sheets, and then similar webinars like this one that you can watch on demand. So these are some of the ones I thought might be most relevant. Taming the Anxious Mind, I think I actually did that one too. Stress busters for parents, mindfulness and meditation, getting out of a funk. So those are great just to watch and again, get some really quick, useful strategies that can kind of help you cope with everything that's been going on. And then it's important too to think about when to seek out help. So if you've tried some of the self-help strategies in the books or in these webinars, or that you found through your own research and they're just not enough, they're not giving you enough relief, or if the stress of your life, your ongoing situation is starting to have a negative impact on your work or your relationships, those are two great signs that a professional can help give you some very tailored advice specific to your situation, and give you things that you may not have tried. And then, of course, talking to a professional who's been trained on how to, address some of the negative thoughts that can impact our mood on a daily basis is incredibly helpful. So even if you just feel like it might be helpful to talk to someone, that's usually a sign that you should come on in. And, we have great trained therapists here, as well as, throughout Colorado, and we'll show you how to access that care. But if you think it might be helpful, I really encourage you to reach out, especially now. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, nobody is questioning if someone could benefit from someone to talk to, because we are all dealing with so much. And so, we are here, take advantage. And then certainly if you're having any thoughts or if you've engaged in any sort of self-harm behaviors, or if you've had thoughts of suicide, definitely do reach out and talk to someone. And so, your primary care physician can often make a referral to a therapist. Your insurance provider will usually have a database you can search for therapists on. If your employer offers an employee assistance program, that can be a great way to get connected to a counselor. Colorado Crisis Services is a fantastic resource. That phone number on the screen, 844-493-8255. You can call it 24 hours a day. You don't have to be in crisis. If it's just 3 a.m. and you just need someone to talk to and it'll help you sleep better, give us a call. If you're looking for a therapist, call that number. It doesn't have to be a crisis. It's also a bridge to get more kind of ongoing help. And so take advantage. It's there in Jeffco, our walk-in centers off of Wadsworth and I-70. It's on Wadsworth just south of I-70. So it is open. It's been open pretty much throughout COVID. And you can walk in if you're in crisis and needing some help. And then there's websites like Psychology Today where you can look up different therapists based on zip code or practice specialty or things like that too. And so, of course, we're here at Jefferson Center as well. We serve the lifespan with programs like individual, group, family therapy. One other piece on here I'll point out specifically, we do have wellness coaching and wellness classes that are available to the community. So if you're just needing a little extra support or accountability in establishing some of these new routines, that wellness coaching can be a fantastic resource. And there's more information on our website about that too. But of course, we'd love for you to all stay connected. You can visit our website there for information on additional classes, mental health first aid, other events we have going on in the community. We've been really successful at moving a lot of these big events online, and so definitely check us out and see what's happening there. But with that, that's me again and my email if you have any questions or would like to reach out after the program. But beyond that, I'd be happy to have folks unmute and ask any questions or share any insights that they might like to at this time.
Amy, thank you so much. This information was very useful. We have gotten a couple of questions through the chat. And so the first one is about how can you get family members involved in helping you keep your goals?
Oh, that's a great question. I think often it starts with preparing yourself and thinking about, what do I really need from my family here? And so the more specific you can be, the more helpful it's going to be for your family members. So rather than saying, you guys can't be eating so much junk food, it's hard for me to stay healthy. Saying, could you keep your snacks in this drawer in the kitchen? And that'll be your drawer. And that way I won't see them. I won't come across them, and it'll be easier for me to stick to my goals. Or would you be willing to eat your snacks in this room in the house, or something like that? Whatever you're specifically needing from them. If it's, your spouse or your partner saying, hey, can you watch the kids for half an hour, when you get home so that I can go for a walk. But being very specific about what's going to be helpful is going to minimize everyone's frustration. Yours, because you're getting what you need, and then for your family members, because they know specifically what you're asking for, and they're not getting frustrated because they don't know how to be helpful. So I would start there with thinking about specifically what you need, and then communicating that very directly to your family members. It can be hard to kind of set that boundary and carve that time out for ourselves. But often people want to help. People, especially the people that love and care about you, they want to help, they want to be supportive. They just don't know how, or they don't know the best way to do that. And so if you can give them some specific guidance, that's often a great first step.
Excellent. Thank you. And then our next question is kind of specific, but they said, when I'm making New Year's resolutions, I always have, like 6 to 7 to sometimes 10 different goals. But I quickly get overwhelmed and don't accomplish all of them. Do you have a recommendation for, how many goals or resolutions that we should have?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And there are a couple of different schools of thought around this. There's one school of thought that thinks about like the Keystone Habits, right? So these are habits that if you can start doing them, they sort of naturally extend to other parts of your life. So exercise is often used as an example of a Keystone Habit, where if you start working out, you're less likely to want to, kind of undo that health benefit by eating junk food. Or you have more energy to then clean your house. And so it's one habit that often naturally permeates to other ones. So in that way, the idea is that it would have, multiple benefits. But really, most research shows starting with one habit is going to be more sustainable. And then once you have that habit kind of mastered, where it feels natural, you don't need the reminders on your phone or the Post-it notes, you've just kind of naturally incorporated it into part of your routine, then it can be really helpful to add that second piece. So again, I would encourage you to think about what's out of those 6, 7, 10 resolutions you set, what's the one that's going to be easiest to incorporate, right? Build that small success and then build from there. Or what's the one habit that's going to have the biggest impact? If you are just burnt out on caring for family and you just really need some more time to yourself, talking to a family member about, can they take over caregiving duties so that you can get a half hour to yourself in the evenings? That might be the goal you want to start with. So either the easiest or the one that's going to have the biggest impact. Those are usually going to be the most motivating to continue.
That's a great point. I love that, of starting with one, and then there's no reason you can't have a resolution in February or March, or you can do them whenever. So that's a great point. I think we have time for one more quick question. This one says, do you have any, the accountability part of things is always tough. Do you have any suggestions for how to stay accountable?
Yeah, there's a great book out there. Gretchen Rubin, she wrote like The Happiness Project, and she has a book called The 4 Tendencies. And part of what she talks about is do you respond more to external accountability or internal accountability? So for some people, resolutions are very easy. They have a lot of internal accountability, and they decide, okay, once I decide I'm going to work out or eat healthier or whatever it is, they very naturally hold themselves accountable and follow through on those expectations. Now, for many of us, we're what Gretchen Rubin would call an obliger, and we do better with external accountability. And so if we know our friend is counting on us to meet them for a walk, or we know that we're on like our wellness program at Jefferson Center, we join these teams and we all work toward the goal of getting a certain number of steps every day. If I know others are relying on me, I'm more likely to follow through. The caveat with that is often spouses are not good accountability partners, because if we're comfortable letting ourselves off the hook, we're often comfortable with letting our spouses off the hook too. So finding someone who you aren't close enough with to feel bad about disappointing them, if that makes sense. You kind of need someone that you don't feel so comfortable with that they'll let you out of what you committed to. So that's where, if you can afford a personal trainer, like some of the rec centers right now are running specials on like New Year's packages and things like that. So finding someone who's going to hold you to it and who's going to expect you to show up is often a great way to introduce that idea of accountability if you struggle with holding yourself accountable.
Great, thank you. It does look like we've got one person with their hand raised. So Linda, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute so that you can ask your question.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this amazing presentation, Amy. Extremely helpful and applicable in many ways. If you find yourself really just unable to kind of even initiate or start even thinking about a goal to begin with, because you're just so immersed in so much like grief and feeling down, what do you suggest? And also, if I could share that screen that had the resources.
Yeah, let me go back to that. Absolutely. Because I'm so glad you asked that, Linda. And I definitely would reach out in that situation. It's sort of the paradox of something like depression or grief is often part of what you experience is a lack of energy and a lack of motivation, especially with depression. Depression really sucks us of that ability to take steps forward. And so that is really where it's important to bring in some outside help, a therapist, a primary care provider. They're someone who can help guide you through some specific strategies to help build that motivation to even take that next step forward. And sometimes, medication can be part of that treatment plan as well. The medication can often kind of boost your energy or your motivation enough to where you can do some more of the self-help strategies around exercise or connecting with friends. Because, certainly when you're in that deep pit of depression, it's really hard to even, figure out where to go next. What is my next step? And so definitely pulling in some professionals who can help guide you and support you so that you don't feel like you have to take that step all alone when you're feeling so down is really important. So definitely check with your primary care doctor. Also because like certain medical conditions like thyroid issues or vitamin deficiencies, they can contribute to feelings of depression as well. So it's always good to just make sure there's nothing medically going on. And then they can definitely explore medication options and get you connected with a therapist that can help also potentially, provide some of that accountability, but help you figure out what's going to make the most sense for you, especially if your energy and your resources are limited. So definitely reach out for help. That is why we're here, and that's what we want to do.
Great. Linda, thank you for that question. And Amy, I think we're coming up on time. So thank you so much for the presentation today. And thank you everybody for coming. no matter what you're facing in life, like if you're feeling overwhelmed or worried or stressed, Jefferson Center is here for you. And we are open, we're accepting new clients, and accessing care is easier than ever with virtual appointments. So you can visit our website at jcmh.org or follow us on Facebook for more resources and information. And you can also reach us by calling 303-425-0300. Thank you again and have a great day.